Everyone, there you go. This meeting's being recorded, so that's a definite. I can't say anything offensive now at all. But hello, everyone. I can't see who's with us tonight because I can see there's 25 participants, but I can't see who. But you 25 lucky souls get to spend your Friday evening with me. So if that number quickly dwindles to about 10, then yeah, I'll realise you've all realised that Friday night is much better served going somewhere else. But anyway, thank you for inviting me back. It's about, God, it must be maybe 4 or 5 years since I did one of those. And it's weird because when I was driving up to the office tonight, I realised that each one of these talks marked a different point in the business. So when I did the first one, although we had an office, I did it from home, so I was stuck in that little office I also used at home. The second one was in my very classic kind of 1990s office with like polystyrene ceiling, and like if you're fans of the UK office, then it was like having an office at Wernham Hogg. It was nice, but it wasn't particularly exciting. And then this one, I have an office that makes me look far grander than it actually is. So for me, these chats kind of mark various points in the business. So it was lovely to be invited back. And as many of you know who've spoken with me before, I can talk for hours about pens, as I'm sure most of you can. So there are various people that ring me up to ask me one question, and then find an hour and a half later they're still stuck on the phone and have to say they're off to some meeting somewhere. Or that their phones run out of battery. But anyway, so I think there's various reasons I've been weirdly asked along tonight into the inner sanctum of FPUK monthly chat. And it's probably to pick my brains on what I do, how I got into doing what I do, how to build a collection, the dreaded I word, which is investment. And so I'm going to kind of cover as much as I can, but as Steph said, then as it goes, I'm happy to take questions as it goes. This isn't you sat in an auditorium and listening to me for an hour, and then at the end I'll allow you to ask questions. You know, I'd like it to kind of be a bit more, two-way. But anyway, I will start you off by telling you how I got into pens, which is a bit of it's not an odd one, but it quite closely links to iZods. So about 13-ish years ago, I got a bonus at the place I was working at the time. I mean, we're not talking banker's bonus here. So there were no Mont Blanc skeletons for me. But what I decided is it would be nice to have a nice pen, a fountain pen. So I'm the sort of person where I research stuff to death. And I probably spent about 3 weeks looking at every single permutation of something I could buy for from memory, it was about £350, something like that. And the pen that I landed on was a Graf von Faber-Castell classic Anello in ivory. So it was ivory kind of lacquer with little platinum rings. And I bought that one. And then I bought a Visconti Homo sapiens Bronze Age. And then I bought a Sailor Progate Imperial Black. And I bought all the different coloured Mont Blanc inks you could have. I looked like some sort of 90s like office legend. They were all lined up on my desk. And then I wanted to buy a Mont Blanc 146 platinum coated. So, not platinum as in solid platinum. I hadn't gone that crazy, but black resin platinum trim. And at that point, I thought, well, right, something's got to give here. So to get that one, I've got to sell one of the others, which actually for me felt quite restrained. I'm a big watch fan. I hate to use the word watch collector because I can't claim to be at that level, but I've got a stupid amount of watches compared to the average person. My wife thinks I'm mental. But I decided 4 pens which makes me laugh now, 4 pens was too much. And that 3 was perfectly, so one of them had to go. And so I logged onto eBay and I thought, right, where do I sell this? Because clearly there are lots of things you're used to selling that you have an idea of what you're doing. Whereas I went onto eBay and I was like, oh, okay, doesn't seem to be, I don't really know. So I did my photos, sold it, and then I bought my Mont Blanc 146. And of course, as everyone knows, because we're all here talking about pens, it then snowballed from there. So the next one that I wanted was a Mont Blanc 149 75th anniversary special edition. And oddly, I found one for sale from a Dutch guy on Fountain Pen Network, and it was cheap. It was £250, which was bargain even in those days. And I've always been the sort of person that likes buying and selling. To give you an idea of how far back that goes, I mean, I might not look 40, but I am 40. But when I was about 7 or 8, on the way home, I used to buy a copy of the Beano. My dad used to pick me up from primary school, and I used to buy a copy of the Beano. And it had a free gift on there one week that I realised that I could buy the comic, sell the free gift, and make more money than it cost me to buy the comic. So I pleaded a case to my dad, and I bought 30 copies of the Beano on the way home, which the shopkeeper, I think, thought, I mean, what on earth? But I bought that. I then flogged the free gift to all my mates at school, sold the Beanos as well, and I probably made, I don't know, probably didn't make a lot. I probably made like a tenner or something, but in those days, that was amazing. So as you can see, I've always liked that kind of back and forth. So I bought this 149 75th anniversary for 250, and I was like, actually, I can make a bit of money here. So I then sold that. I think I sold it for 500, and then I reworked that into the collection. But then that started the kind of realization that there might be something there business-wise, and I won't bore you about the next kind of 1 or 2 year period because I kind of dabbled and did bits, but that's where iZods began, and that's how I got into pens. To clear up a question that I often get asked, where does iZods come from? It has nothing to do with pens. My great grandparents lived in a place called iZods Yard in Redditch near Birmingham, and when I started the business, I wanted something that was more, or that you could use more of as a brand rather than just Roy's Pens or whatever. It's that's no issue if somebody wants to do that. But for me, I wanted it. So when we did our own brand pen, I could put iZods on. So that's where iZods comes from. It's nothing to do at all with pens, even though I think a lot of people assume it is. So that's how it started. Fast forward all these years later, and yeah, this is what I do day in, day out. I realised the other day that there hasn't been a single day in the last 10 years where I haven't done something iZods related, as bad as that sounds. I'm not sat at my desk every day, but there's always stuff happening. Because I deal with people all around the world, there's stuff happening at all times of day and night, so it's quite handy at the moment with a 6-week-old baby at home, because if I'm awake at 3 in the morning, I can answer emails and WhatsApps from people in the appropriate time zone. So actually, that's a positive to being very tired. The next question that was originally on the kind of blurb that went with this was, what is my favourite pen? And that's really difficult, very difficult, because I see so many beautiful pens every day, every week, that it's very easy to get blasé about it. Pens that are iconic and rare and beautiful, you always have an excitement when they come in, but that might be the 10th one that you've had in the last 6 months. It's difficult. But there are 2 pens that I sat having my coffee earlier and thought, well, what would I class as my favourite pens? If I'm going with money's no issue, then I'd go for the Mont Blanc 90 years skeleton. It's a 149 size pen, and it's got a ruthenium coated overlay, red gold nib. It's beautiful. It's one of those pens, it looks beautiful, and it's even more beautiful in the flesh. But the pen that I actually really love, and I use, in fact, I've got it in my hand at the moment, on a daily basis, and I've got various versions, is just the Pilot Custom 823. I'm sure people were expecting me to say some outrageous Mont Blanc, but just one of those. That's the demonstrator version, the completely clear version. But I like the smoke one, the amber one. There's a verdigris green one they did as a US exclusive, and I don't know. There's just something lovely about it. So that would be the pen that I choose as my favourite without going crazy. I can easily go crazy because we see all sorts of wonderful stuff. But if I'm brought back to a pen that isn't kind of too outrageous, then that's probably where I'd be. I know that a question that often comes up, and this was third on the list, and it's a really difficult one, even for someone whose days are spent consumed by pens and prices and fluctuations of prices, is what makes a good investment pen. And this is such a difficult subject. I never ever would tell a customer that they should buy a pen because it's a good investment. This is a difficult one because different dealers will take different viewpoints on it, and what I'm not saying is that you can't ever make money on a pen, but what I am saying is that you should never buy a pen assuming you will make money. I remember hearing one of the I think they were one of the European dealers doing a video a while ago, and it was about I think it was a Caron Dash ballpoint, I think, saying, this looks amazing. There's every chance this will go up in value. And it's such a bad thing to say. I think, I don't comment on what other people do because I'm constant. That's my business keeps me more than busy enough. I don't care what other people do, but there are a lot of people that I think will look at the world of special and limited editions and assume that they will, if you buy them when they come out, they'll sell out and they'll go up in value. I had someone get in touch recently who bought the last 5 writers editions from a Mont Blanc boutique, so full retail, and wanted to sell them. This wasn't someone I'd spoken to before, so it wasn't a customer, and they bought them on the assumption that they could then sell that a fairly sizable profit. And so it's a very difficult conversation to say, well, actually, most of those are still available, and 3 of those are on offer with retailers, and they're never going to go at retail, let alone make any money. I think this is obviously a wider subject, but I think some people assume it's very much like, if I've got any watch fans tonight, there a lot of people assume it's like the kind of Rolex steel sports market, which is incredibly complicated and softened a bit. But people assume that if you can get hold of one at retail, that you can then, once that's gone, you can then make a profit on it. There are so few pens that if you've bought at full retail, that you can, then a couple of years later, a year later, go, wow, that's an amazing profit. There are examples. So the Mont Blanc Shakespeare 1597 edition, the retail was probably, I don't know, 2.5, 3 when it came out, and they regularly trade at 8, 6, well, between 6 and 10 probably. But for every one of those, there's 100 that don't. A good example is, so Mont Blanc did a series called the Patron of Art series, and they finished that. They finished that series with a pair, the Victoria and Albert. And I remember various customers saying, "God, I've got to get hold of that because it's the last in the series. Yeah, people are going to go crazy for them." Like 2 years later, if you Google search that, there are a couple of Mont Blanc retailers, not direct boutiques, but Mont Blanc retailers that are doing like 30% off brand new. Even Mont Blanc have still got it for sale on their website. You can literally order it now. So investment is such a difficult thing when it comes to pens, and I will never ever. I've had customers, new and old, come to me looking to spend a very sizable chunk of money, but I will never say to them, right, that's a great place, because if you spend that 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, whatever it is, thousand, that you will definitely get a return, and you'll get a return in 2 years. If you bought at the right time and you're prepared to sit on them for years and years, like, for example, Mont Blanc released the Hemingway in 1992. We've got one in stock at the moment. It's still got its $300 price sticker on it, and they're £2,000, approximately, give or take condition, 1,700 to £2,500–3,000. So clearly they've made money, but at the same time, that's been sat on that for 30 years. So investment is really difficult, and I think it's more complicated than me just giving an overall brief. I think if you're ever at a stage where you're looking at buying pens solely to make money, but you're buying at retail, call me, WhatsApp me, whatever. I'll give you my opinion on it. I don't mind if you're buying from iZods or not. I'll genuinely give you my opinion. Clearly, you can make money on pens, because this is my job and this is what pays my mortgage. But I'm not walking into Mont Blanc on Bond Street or Selfridges or wherever and buying pens at retail. So yeah, I will happily talk to anyone at great length in more detail about investment. But I think the thing when it comes to pens is buy for enjoyment. And if you happen to buy right and then make a little bit at some point, brilliant. But it's a very, very difficult beast to predict when it comes to buying any limited edition or special edition and expecting to make money on it. And that's not limited just to Mont Blanc. That can be any of the premium brands. The subject of investment tends to mostly be about Mont Blanc, but it can obviously be plenty of others. But yeah, as I say, I'm happy to talk individually to people at any point about that. The next question that was on my list was, what are the best brands to pick up second hand? This is a tricky one, because the honest answer is all of them. But as long as they're in the right condition and at the right price. Now, this isn't a sales pitch for iZods, and I'm really conscious of not doing that. But to give you an idea of what's our experience of second-hand pens, every day pens come into us, and some are brand new, some are new old stock, some are very lightly used, some are very heavily used. But if we focus in, for example, on eBay, we buy very little from eBay. I'll keep a kind of cursory look at it, but we buy very little. But it's amazing the number of times that pens come into us as unused, and they look like they've been dragged along a very tarmac heavy road for the last 10 years, and then people are, it's never left the box. Well, it has, hasn't it? And so I think what we try and do as a business is take away the element of risk. It's no, that's the same with many other pen dealers. But what we're doing is doing the filtering for you. When every pen comes in, regardless of whether it's £50 or £40,000, it goes through the same checks. So every function will get tested, everything will get ultrasonically cleaned to make sure it's spot on. We take away that risk, because there's nothing worse, and this isn't just limited to pens. There's nothing worse than buying something secondhand. You're really excited about it, and then it turns up and it's either nothing like it should be, or there's a small issue that you can't solve, because you haven't got the tool for it, or piston's stuck because it hasn't been used for 20 years or whatever. So a decent chunk of what we do is filter out all that horrible part, so that when it reaches the website, that there's been all sorts of bits that have gone before for it to actually get there. Nothing ever just comes in these doors and appears on the website 2 minutes later. The process is meticulous and identical and repeated for every single pen that we sell, and we sell thousands of pens a year. So sometimes I tend to wear gloves these days, because I used to go home and my wife would look at me like, what on earth? Because I'd have ink everywhere. So it looks slightly sinister at points during the day, because I've got these black rubber gloves that I wear, and occasionally you get an Amazon driver or a DHL driver who drops off, and you go and open the office door and you're stood there in these black gloves, and it all looks a little bit sinister. But yeah, so I've kind of gone slightly off piece there. But what I'm saying is, when it comes to buying secondhand, every brand can be great. You can find absolute gems in all brands, and a real part of what I've tried to do, not just from a business point of view, but from a personal point of view, is to bring as many interesting and unusual pens to what we do, because what I don't want people to do is to log on to the website and go, it's only Mont Blanc, it's only this. I will buy literally anything that's interesting, whether that's a US brand, an Italian brand, a Japanese brand, whatever. The more unusual, the better. So there's all sorts of stuff you can pick up secondhand. Especially these days. I've seen, even in the 10 or so years that I've done what I do, the landscape of available brands has changed hugely. And although some of those are younger brands, most of them have filtered down into the secondary market. It's just a case of having a proper look at stuff. Clearly, if you buy from us or you buy from another dealer, then you should be pretty sorted anyway. But if you're buying from eBay, or you're buying from Reddit, or you're buying from Fountain Pen Network, or you're buying from FPUK, the sales group, whatever, clearly most people on there are pretty spot on. But just do your own little bit of kind of checking when do the photos look right. Clearly all you guys know that, so I'm telling you stuff. I never want to. I hate this idea that I'm kind of sat here going, this is what you do, because clearly all you guys know this. But there's all sorts of brilliant buys out there. Some of them I've uncovered some incredible gems over the years. I think the best one I ever had, and trust me, not all of our pens that come in are like this. About 6 years ago on eBay, there was someone that had put a Mont Blanc 149 up for sale, and it was listed as a steel 149. And A, that net has never existed, and B, they were terrible, like 20-year-old camera phone photos, but I knew exactly what it was. So my chubby fingers quickly tapped away and bought it. And I bought it for, I think, 300 quid, and it was a solid platinum 149, which had never been used. So everything, the barrel, the cone, the cap are solid platinum, then all the trim is solid gold, and it comes in a big kind of wooden lacquered presentation box. And the retail price on that is about 12 or 13,000. But yeah, not everything is like that. So trust me, that feels like a distant memory, that win. But yeah, so buying secondhand, I think some people are more comfortable with it. Some people are concerned about it. Some people have brilliant relationships with particular pen shops or particular boutiques, and so they only want to buy new, and that's absolutely fine. But I think the approach should be you can make very big savings by buying something that might have been inked once, twice, or it might have been given as a gift to someone who's then put it in a drawer for 20 years. You know, I mean, to give you an idea, the retail price on the Mont Blanc 149 these days is late 800s. Even for an unused one from us, depending on the trim, it's going to be 575, 600, 625. So don't be too afraid of buying used, because actually it's a brilliant way of building a collection cheaper than just rocking up at, you know, wherever. But clearly, yeah, you guys have great relationships, I'm sure, with various pen people anyway. So I'm not trying to tell you not to buy from them. I'm just saying you can balance both sides and build a collection really well. And that takes me nicely. I didn't do that on purpose, by the way.
Sorry, can I just jump in on that?
Yeah.
I bought myself a Namiki bamboo from you, which was in rollerball form.
Yes.
Lo and behold, it was compatible with a fountain pen section. And the amount of saving I made from that, you know, versus actually buying that full retail price was a humongous difference.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing that you've done that. I thought how fantastic, because obviously, clearly, a lot of the time you couldn't do it. But yeah, brilliant. You think, as you say, what a saving that is compared to just buying the fountain pen in the first place, just getting a little bit creative. I mean, how fantastic. But yeah, anyway, sorry. So I segue on to the next original question that was in the list, was how to build a collection. Again, see, I pondered for quite a while on this, because this is difficult, because I understand this being a collector of sorts. Everyone comes at this from a different angle, and it's fascinating. This is part of the fascination for me in doing what I do, because I see so many different styles of collector every day, every month. You know, there's never a day where everyone is doing the same thing in the same way. I think the lesson that most people learn is that it's really difficult to know what route you're going to go at the start, and I've been guilty with it on watches, where at the start you kind of have a bit of a scattergun approach, and you buy this, because you don't necessarily know where the end goal is going to be. But I suppose my advice, and I shouldn't do this, because does this mean people will buy less? I'd say start slowly. It's very easy to, and clearly it's human nature, and I tell you this, and I can, you know, and I've done it in the past, but it's very easy to buy lots of completely different and wonderful things in the world of pens, and then get 6 months in and realize that maybe 80% of it you're just not that keen on, or it doesn't stick with the theme that you've gone down. And coming back to the used kind of piece, actually buying used is a really good way of starting, because if you're minimizing the cost to start off with, if you then do get to the point where you're looking to part with X% of those purchases because they don't fit the bill, that pain is going to be much lower than if you've rocked up with the credit card at Mont Blanc in Bond Street, or wherever it is. So I think it's just a case of keeping it. Yeah, it's easy for me to say, because I'm telling you now, I don't always adhere to this, but you never quite know, and especially the world of pens is so massive. Like, it's so easy to just go crazy to start off with, and then, you know, there's a lot of people that get in touch with me and then send me a ginormous list of stuff. No, I don't like this, and I shouldn't have bought that, and I shouldn't have bought this, and I shouldn't have bought that. But you all know, you're all established people in the world of pens. There will be people that will be further along their journeys than others. But I always find it fascinating, because we get some people that collect particular styles. We get some people that collect particular colours. I've got one one customer that will only buy yellow pens, and that's, hey, brilliant. I mean, it's quite tricky, but yeah, they'll only buy yellow pens. Some people will only buy. That's a brilliant cat in the background, by the way. I love that. If I was at home now, I've got 3 Bengal cats at home, and if I was at home now, you wouldn't even see my face. It would be like when they had that one in the pandemic where the judge or whatever had the cat filter on. There'd just be cats everywhere. So that's why I've escaped to the office. But yeah, I mean, people stick to one brand. People stick to one concept. I've got one customer that only likes to buy pens with a musical theme, so they tend to buy some of the Mont Blanc great characters, because you've got things like Elvis Presley, Montegrappa did an Elvis Presley, Miles Davis, there's also, so I can't tell you how to build a collection. I just say, knowing what it's like to be a human, it's very easy to just go absolutely mad. And I will happily, again, and this is a genuine thing, I will happily talk to anyone if they're contemplating a purchase or they want some advice. I don't care what retailer it's from. I don't care if it's from a competitor, whatever. I will if you drop me a WhatsApp or give me a call or send me an email, I'll happily give my opinion on something. Or, even if you just want to ask, what do you think of this? Is this a good thing? Whatever. I'll happily talk to anyone. So there's no right or wrong, and I don't want anyone to think that there is, because there clearly isn't. I collect pens and watches in a completely different way to everyone else on this conversation. I had one person who they only buy factory sealed pens, not because they want to leave them factory sealed, but because they want to sit down and be the first person to open the outer packaging. And even if that comes at a significant premium, there was one particular pen where we had an unused one and a factory sealed one, and the difference was £1,000 because it was particularly rare, and they went for the factory sealed one because they wanted to sit there and get a little pair of scissors or whatever and just cut the one label that kept it factory sealed, and wanted that joy of being the first person to have seen it in 30 odd years. And you know what? If that's what you want to do, amazing. That's, it's amazing. And there's so many stories from so many customers and so many people about how they've collected and how they've built up, stuff over years. And that's brilliant. I think my one other thing I would say is don't get trapped in, we get people that buy pens from a certain series, not necessarily from us, but from wherever. So they buy the 5 pens in that series, and they get 5 pens in, and they're like, actually, I don't really like these anymore, but I don't want to sell them. But then they feel compelled to buy the next release and the next release and the next one, because they have to keep up the collection, even though 5 pens in, they're like, God, I've made a mess up here, and I don't want it. So hey, as I say, I can't claim to tell people how to collect, but I see so many different angles on collecting every day, and I think it's just that thing. It just takes time. Say, with me and watches, I bought ones that then, a year later, I'm like, and it's first world problems, and how nice, where you're like, actually, so then I sold a whole load earlier in the year because, your tastes evolve, and you tend to get a better idea of what you like. I personally like demonstrator pens. Other customers hate demonstrator pens. So in fact, my wife knows too much about pens because she spent years listening to me talk about pens. And the only pen that she has is a Pelican M805 demonstrator. And I covet it every time because she barely uses it. She's on maternity leave, obviously, at the moment, and it's stuck in a drawer anyway. And it's like, could I borrow that? No, you leave it in there. And it's like, oh God. I said, well, can I sell it? No, can't sell it. So, but demonstrators for me are what I love. But I can tell you now, there is at least one person who on this chat will go, oh my God, I absolutely hate demonstrators. What's the point in them? Hate them. Really don't like them. The last thing. Oh, sorry.
We have got a question. Do you find that people are more savvy about what they're selling these days? Are people doing more research?
Yeah, I mean, my thing is always that there's so much information out there when it comes to. Are you saying so? People that want to sell, people that are looking to sell pens. Yeah, like, you know, I think probably 10 years ago, you got fewer people that understood the ins and outs of what they were selling. But my thing is always, and I'd never not say it to someone, like, you know, go and have a look, go and see what, you know, what things are selling for. There's so much information out there. You know, there's so much you can, you know, you don't have to delve deeply. I think sometimes the problem that people have, if they're not familiar with pens, so, you know, if you've inherited a collection of pens or you've been given one as a gift 15 years ago and you haven't got the box still or whatever, sometimes it's knowing what the model is. You know, there's so many different models of it, and if you don't know how to narrow that down to find the value, that's quite tricky. But, you know, yeah, my thing is always that I'm happy for, you know, I don't want anyone to come to us, sell a load of pens, and then a week later go, oh my God, why did I, you know, hey, look, there are two sides to this. It's a business, so clearly we have to make a profit, but I always try and be as fair as possible. And I will, you know, I never say, right, come on, accept that. I will more than happily tell people to go away and look at other, you know, go and look at prices, go and look at sold prices, because, yeah, that's, you know, I never want anyone to be unhappy with it. I think it's just from our side, we offer something incredibly simple. And that's, you know, whether that's in any environment where you're a dealer in, that sounds dodgy, when you're a retailer of used items, there are lots of people where they just want the ease of it, because, you know, we'll pay up front by PayPal, or, you know, our post normally arrives by 8:30 and the payments arrive done by 9 if they want bank transfer. So yeah, but hey, it's definitely these days, I think there are more people that will quote to us clippings of eBay listings, or, you know, it's usually from some of the American dealers who have decided that they want to price it about 50 times more than it's worth, and the listing's been live for about 10 years. But yeah, and that's fine. You know, that's all part of the job. So yeah, that's no drama to me.
Yeah, you've actually built a customer base, haven't you, that you know, so you know what you're looking for.
Yeah, you know, yeah, exactly. And say I'm very fortunate to do something that it sounds cool, but I do something that I love, and I work with customers that I really get on with. You know, like the pen show is a great example of that. There's so many faces that you see there that I'm genuinely pleased to see, or I haven't, you know, in this day and age, there are people that I'll message on WhatsApp day in, day out, all year, but I'll never actually see them. So the pen show is a great chance to catch up. You know, and the business has changed fundamentally over the years, where I remember when I first started, I probably used to check eBay about 500 times a day. Whereas, you know, I'm very fortunate that we've built up a network of people that we work with, that we get offered lots of wonderful, wonderful pens for sale every single day. In fact, I've got my phone here, but I haven't checked it yet, but I can guarantee you there's at least one email with somebody looking to sell something. You know, and that's fantastic. The last question that was on my original list was, why are some brands so expensive? I hate the word expensive, not because their price point is not very high, but because it makes
relative.
It makes it sound like you're getting fleeced in some way. Oh, you know, it's like, I don't know, we went to a restaurant, God, it was expensive. Doesn't sound the same as, you know, whatever. It just, so the way that I look at it is, there are brands that are clearly more premium than others. Clearly there are, you know, that's, you know, and there are lots of factors in that. Clearly, when we talk about the M word, when we talk about Mont Blanc, which I talk about a lot every day, I'm not sitting here telling you, God, every model they make is the most wonderful thing, and every retail price is deserved, and it's 4 times as good as, well, take my 823, for example. We sell those, I don't know, most of them for about 190, 200, something like that. But that doesn't make it a quarter of the pen of a Mont Blanc 149. But Mont Blanc are playing in an entirely different league when it comes to perception, when it comes, even if you know nothing about pens, I can tell you now, if you put down a Mont Blanc 149 or any Mont Blanc with that snow cap on the top, you pop it down in a meeting, there will be at least one person around that table that will know what brand that is, even if they have no interest in pens. And so, I mean, this is a very long conversation, this one, so I'm going to try and keep this up, because there's a whole host of different ins and outs about this. But brands sit at different points. You get that in anything. You get in the watch world, you clearly get that. You can get smaller brands that are making amazing stuff, but their price point is massively lower than other brands. But it's such a complicated argument. But often the basis of what it boils down to, if you strip out the brand element, is materials used. Inherently, when I designed the iZods Paradigm pen that I did a talk on a few years ago, one of the decisions was, instead of using resin, we used ebonite, and it was solid coloured ebonite, which is quite. Have I got one? 1 second, sorry. Excuse me, you will see I've got those shoes on there. There we go. I think this is one of only like a couple left. Where is my camera? So it was ebonite, but in colours rather than, because most people think, black or whatever.
Black.
And the cost was horrific. Like, I remember we worked with Nino. At Delta and Myora, and I'd conjured up this pen that I wanted to make, and I said to him, "Well, we're not doing it in resin, we're doing it in ebonite." And he was like, "Okay, I'll get you some prices." My God, it's expensive. Like, so, but I still did it because it was the right thing to do. So materials will obviously affect. Of course, everyone in this group knows. Whatever it is, if it's celluloid, if it's whatever, if the production process is massively long, whatever it is, it will affect it. Limited editions tend to affect it. I mean, clearly a big current talking point is that new Lamy 2000, the Pine edition. Like, I sit there with like a big bag of popcorn and just watch people's comments about it. I love it. But hey, it is what it is, and they're selling brilliantly. Like, and that's just a colour change, in many ways. But it's the same with, I've got one of the blue ones arriving in a week or so, and we had the brown version recently. Hey, look, this is a whole other argument, but that is a Lamy 2000. It's just that hey, fair play to Lamy. Like, you know what? A, it looks great, and B, people are buying it. But it's fascinating to see what people are saying about it. I suppose other factors that make a different brand reputation, like we've already said, the history, maybe. The Mont Blanc 149 is a great example of that. It's an icon that was launched in the 50s, has stayed pretty much the same. And again, this is making it very simple. So trust me, I know the ins and outs of every single version of it. But in many ways, since the 60s, it's a very similar beast. But hey, if you look at, I've got a price list from like 2009 or whatever over there. I think the 149 was like 300 and something quid, and now it's 800 odd pounds. It's the same. In many ways, it's the same pen. But the history is there. It's their icon. It's their flagship. And so it has that price point. The other point, nibs obviously make a vast difference. I mean, look at the sailor speciality nibs. You know, we had one in recently from memory. I think it was a King Eagle nib that we had, and that went for probably 10 times as much as we'd sell that same pen with just a standard MF, you know, medium, whatever, music nib, whatever. But nibs are like, but clearly, you in many ways, the sailor level, it's another conversation because of their rarity and how they were made and who they were made by and how difficult they are to get hold of. But you know, that will make a dramatic difference. You know, we find that. You know, it's amazing how, you know, if you go down, clearly most people buy mediums, and that's fine. So we stock a lot of mediums. But if I can find you know, I keep using the Mont Blanc 149 thing, but it's a useful one. If I can find an EF or an oblique double broad, there will always be a slight, I'll keep the premium to a minimum, but there will always be a premium, because for every 100 mediums that we get, how many oblique double broads do we get? Very, very few. So nibs will always make a big difference. And you know, oh, sorry, you carry on.
Sorry, does it make a difference if there's been a nib grind on a pen?
This is a tricky thing. I think sometimes I think it will give a premium to a very specific sector of people who like that. It will rule out a huge number of other people, and I think it's quite pen specific. I think if you start tinkering at a very, tinkering's the wrong word, because I don't like some of the nib work that goes on is immense. So tinkering sounds like I'm going, oh, you know, but
down paper, down the yard.
Yeah. But I think it can be a brilliant thing. Like I buy from a few people that always have italic broad grinds. I get other people that take stuff down uber fine, and I'll buy them because I find them interesting. But you will get you will get the less enthusiast level side of the market. The people that just want a nice pen will steer clear of that, because they don't. It's like customizing a car in many ways. A lot of people want to buy whatever they really want to buy, and if someone's changed the wheels and put a different exhaust on it, even if it's all brilliant, and you know, they'll go, oh god, I don't know about that. But then for certain, you know, enthusiast parts of the market, yeah, you know, we'll hoover up anything that's good, you know, done properly and interesting, because I know it will go. Because how many other people are selling, you know, whatever it is, or you know, and so yeah, it does make a difference. It really does. Not always in a good way, but sometimes it can be, yeah. And then the last point I had as to why a brand's so expensive was rarity, not limited edition wise, but take for example Nakaya, for instance. I buy as much as I can from anyone at sensible prices. But it's, you know, this is a difficult concept to explain. You can't just go and log on and necessarily buy any particular Nakaya model you want, because you've got to wait 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is. It's a bit like, and again, I link it back again to the Rolex steel sports market. I've got a friend who said, oh, I've been saving up for you. I really want a particular Rolex. It was just a Submariner, standard Submariner. He was like, can you come with me? I was like, well, you won't just be able to walk in and get one. So what do you mean? They've got one in the window. I said, yeah, but that's not. You can't just have that. Like that's exhibition only. Like you can put your name down for one, and you might get lucky, and you might get it in a few months, or you might still be, depending on your relationship, you might be waiting 2 or 3 years later. I said, if you really want one, there's plenty of like dealers that you can get one for. But and he was like, I don't know what you mean. Like, I can't just get one. It's on their website with a retail price and everything. I'm like, yeah, but you can't. And I think the premium that comes with certain brands is like, if you look at the car, clearly the workmanship is incredible, and it is, but the price point that often they sit in the market is factored in, because you can't just order one. So where else are you going to go and buy that if you're, unless you're prepared to wait 6, 12, 18 months, whatever it is. And so it's such a complicated mix of things as to why brands are premium. And again, I could probably, I've already know, like, I've bored you for nearly an hour already. This is what you imagine living with. Imagine being my wife. Like this is her world. And so I think she's quite pleased. In fact, she told me to come up here slightly early tonight. And she said it was traffic, but I think it's probably just because she gets like an hour or two of quietness. This is what
I'll drop her a message and let her know that we do this once a month.
She'll drop you a message and say he's free every night. So you'd be doing her a deep service, I should imagine. It would be a good thing. But that I've basically covered the points that were originally there.
No, that's great.
I know it's difficult, and I've been vague on certain bits, but it's because with questions like why are brands so expensive, that's probably 2 or 3 hours on its own, and everyone again comes at it from so many different angles. I've got some people say, I will never buy Mont Blanc. I'm never buying because I don't believe it. Other people only ever buy Mont Blanc. I've got other people will pay a monstrous fortune for a particularly rare celluloid, even if you can buy, and others will go, well, what do you mean? I'll just take that version. It's resin.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Everyone comes at it from different ways, and so it's important not to pigeonhole people and say, well, no, you shouldn't do that because of this. And so this is why, oddly, it can be quite a challenge for me, because I have to help people entirely differently on every. I'll get one customer that they'll want a pen just because, and it's absolutely fine, just because they want it to look as like blingy as possible, and they want, and because that's what they want. And then I'll get someone else that will want something, they'll want a very specific version of something from a very specific period of time that was only produced for a couple of years because it had those specific markings on the cap. And so it's quite a challenge, because you can go completely up and down as to how you're looking after people every day. And I'm over a decade in, so that's a normal day for me. But some days, I leave the office. I mean, it's only like a 10-15 minute drive for me to get home. But sometimes you leave the office and you're like, God, you feel drained because you've had like 20 different conversations, all totally different. And clearly my draining job is hardly that draining. I've got a coffee machine over there and a nice bed and a sofa and so I can hardly claim that I've been at the coal face all day, or I've had to deal with patients all day, because most of mine is just surrounded by lovely, pretty things. I do mean pens by that, just so you're aware. I don't have, this isn't like Wolf of Wall Street. That's not what it's like in here. But so I don't mean that, but it's you have to, in terms of sales, you have to take, it's very tailored. It's not just I sell X, Y, and Z, which do you want? There's a lot of taking people on the right journey and making sure they end up where they want to be.
Yeah. We have had a few questions.
Brilliant. Fire away.
With eBay pricing, do you feel that it skews what the actual value of a pen is?
I think more so when it gets to higher levels. Yeah. I mean, look, I have no issue with people using eBay prices as to bash me over the head with when they're selling something. But there's so many on there that are just so wrong. They're so expensive, and they'll sit on there for years. I know listings on there that have been on there for like 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
But I'll get people saying, yeah, but it's for sale for this, and it's like, it is for sale for that, but it's not sold at that. Like, and that's the key. I will never try and stop people looking and researching, but it's one thing, you know, I could put that pilot up on eBay for £1,000 in the next 2 minutes, but it doesn't mean it's worth £1,000.
No.
But you know, you'll see, you know, you'll see stuff that you can even buy at retail. I had one the other day, and it was a particular great characters pen that you can still buy at retail at like 700 quid, and the person says, yeah, but it's up at like 1,200. It's like, that's fine, but it's you can still buy it new for 700. It doesn't mean it will sell. But yeah, the eBay prices are often used as a
Yeah.
But I think most people then understand. They just, you know, that you say, well, that's fine, but actually look at what stuff's sold for, you know, or, you know, that, and I've got no problem if people want to go away and try and get that price from other people, because ultimately, and I suppose this is why it's an odd thing, I buy in a very different way than, you know, like when I covet a watch, I'll be like Googling the hell out of it and looking at photos of it on Instagram and thinking, how long is it going to take me to save up for that? And I'm like, oh, and if I see one come up for sale at half decent price, like, oh, maybe I'll stretch to that. Whereas when I'm buying for the business, as cold as it sounds, I have a price, and if that price isn't acceptable, then I don't lose any sleep over that. I'll just, you know, that's fine. And you know, sometimes people go away and get that price from another dealer, and that's brilliant. Sometimes they'll come back and say, yeah, you know, fair play, I'll, you know, a week later, a month later, or whatever it is, I'll take your offer, and that's fine. But because, yeah, I'm buying very differently, because if I bought with my heart when it comes to the business,
you'd be bankrupt.
Then I can tell you now that my office wouldn't be an office, and my wife would have to hear lots about pens because I'd be working from home, which is fine to work from home, but it would not be, that wouldn't even be a business. Out of all, and this is how cold I have to be, out of all the tens of thousands of pens I've ever sold, I've only lost money on 2 of them. And do you know why that was? And this taught me, I bought those 2 pens when I was, when I'd consumed a vast amount of red wine and gone away to North Norfolk for my wife. And we were sat I can still remember the pub, we were sat in the Lifeboat Inn in Thornham. And the fire was raging. It was a cold night. We'd been sat in there all afternoon and got through copious amounts of red wine. And I bought these 2 pens, not really thinking about it. And they're the only 2 pens I've ever lost money on. And that's why I can't buy pens under the influence of wine, you see.
No, this chat is not good for me, because I will have a glass of red wine while we're on here, and people start talking about wonderful things, and I wake up in the morning and go, what did I buy?
If I wasn't talking, I would, but I've just got my water bottle, because I didn't even dare have a cup of coffee, because I thought I'll talk even more than I normally do. So I've gone cold turkey.
Ros is talking about the fact that she actually likes an engraved pen. So how does it be a pen being engraved? She likes an engraved pen because...
okay, so some a pen that's got some sort of previous engraving on it.
Yeah.
It puts a lot of people off. I think it always has to come back to the price, doesn't it? Well, there's 2 options here, or 3 options. One, you leave it as is, and honestly, I've got to my right, shows us left here, but to my right, there are a whole stack of pens that are waiting to be sorted, and quite a few of those have engraved because I bought them from one specific person that had them engraved. You either leave it because it's not a drama, or you send it off to the brand and you get that part replaced.
Right.
Which is easy, especially with and I always come back to the Mont Blanc thing, but with Mont Blanc, unless you're going down, unless it's a sterling silver or, you know, something limited edition, if it's just a black resin pen and someone's had, you know, Barry and Sandra Forever 20th of November 08 put on it, like, you can get that change for like 70 quid. So, but I think, yeah, some people don't care, and I think that's brilliant, because just because it's got an engraving on doesn't mean it's a rubbish pen. It's just got an engraving on, and sometimes it's nice to think there's a bit of a story behind it. That's exactly what Rosa said. Yeah, I like that. When you get some of them that are a bit cold, you get, like, I don't know, Pierpoint Capital 2023 winner on it, and it's like, you know what? that's not that exciting. But I don't know. I quite like this. I had a 146, the pinstripe sterling silver one, and it a while ago, and it had its original box and original receipt, and it was engraved with this couple's name, and it was a significant date for them, but it had been passed down, and the family decided to sell it on. But I like that. I like it adds a warmth to it. I think, you know, I think that's lovely. But I think actually sometimes you can pick pens up that have got engravings on at much lower prices, because for a lot of people they won't touch them. You know, but yeah, hey, I'm up for an engraved pen. Why not?
So Mark says, "Hi Roy, I bought a Visconti Homo sapien Blue Lagoon a few years ago from you. Top service, by the way.
Brilliant.
And tuned it myself to a Zoom style nib. I fancy changing the nib to a standard Visconti medium nib. Do you know if it is a large or small nib that I need for this pen? Also, how do the 18 karat gold nibs compare to the 23K Palladium Dream Touch?"
God, that is quite a big question, because that's like two sides of an opposing war when it comes to 23 karat palladium and 18 karat. My God, especially Visconti, like, it's really difficult, and because I think you get brilliant examples of both, you get terrible examples of both. Personally, I like the 23 karat palladium ones. I don't know a specific reason why. I just like them, but you'll get an equal number of people that will tell you they're the most hated nib they've ever had, and they want an 18 karat nib. I think I've got some spares, by the way, so if he can drop me a message, or I'm pretty certain I've got some spares knocking about, so I could probably sort that.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's, hey, the nice thing, I suppose, is you can keep the original and then swap them back if you want, and they're not that difficult to do in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, the 18 karat versus 23 karat thing is, I don't know which side to come down on, because there are brilliant examples, but God, they've been some, I mean, God, I've had some awful ones, like where it arrives and it's brand new and you get it out, and like, I reckon my 2-year-old could create a better nib occasionally than, like, it's just dreadful. But if you get a good one on either side, they're dreamy, they're lovely. But yeah, I'm happy to assist in any way I can on that one. And say, I think I opened a box and found some spares earlier. I don't really know why, but what you'll find is it's like an Aladdin's cave in here. Like there's just stuff that I've forgotten about, and like random nibs that crop. I found
fantastic.
I found 3 double broad 149 nibs the other day that I had no idea were there.
Brilliant. Do you plan to sell more of your own exclusive designs?
Ooh,
that's a yes.
It is a yes, but there is and this is where, like, the little, like, angel and devil, like, sit on my shoulder, because they're like, just do it again, do another paradigm. You love doing that, and it was brilliant, and people really liked it. But the flip side of that, and I think the difficulty is, when I made the paradigm, I whacked everything in that I could to make it as interesting as possible, and the margin was genuinely wafer thin, like wafer thin. And I think the trouble is, I mean, it was priced at $399, which, to be fair, for cramming in all the bits that it did, and like, that was, I thought, was pretty cheap, really. It's not cheap, but compared to, like,
for what it was.
Yeah, but I think the difficulty is in the wider world. Most people that are going to spend £400 on a pen, and I will say this in all honesty, are not going to buy an iZods paradigm. And so, inside our wonderfully warm community, people were brilliant, and that's it. But I think if I do it again, I can't. What I don't want to do is just make something for the sake of it, and that's why there's been such a big hiatus between the Paradigm and anything else. Because what I don't want to do is make a pen just to put the iZods name on it, but it's not that, not that exciting, and it's just another pen. If I do it, I want there to be something where you go, okay, I can see why we've done that, and that actually reflects me.
Well, there is a second question, which might actually tie in with that, which was if you could collaborate with any pen brand to produce an iZods edition.
Ooh. What would that? God, that's quite difficult.
That's our Ed giving you that one.
I think I'd probably go. I think I'd either go Sailor, just because they produce some mental stuff and I love it, and I'd have access to all their nib magic source, or Mont Blanc, just because, I mean, who doesn't want to do a flaming collaboration with Mont Blanc? Like, I don't even want to do it because it's Mont Blanc. I just want to do it because they don't do it. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? I need to be famous, and in decades to come, they do great characters. But I'd actually need to do something worthwhile in life rather than to just bore people about pens. But I think it would have to be either Sailor or Mont Blanc, just because. I mean, God, the options on both of these. So if the head of Mont Blanc UK somehow hears this recording and thinks, you know what, he seems quite decent actually.
He listens to FPUK chats all the time.
Well, exactly. I told him not to. I told them not to come tonight. I said it will be too much temptation.
Be embarrassing.
Yeah, both, and then I'll say I'll have to choose between you and Sailor because they'll both be in touch. But look, hey, any collaboration is cool. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I nudged Nino on doing stuff all the time. So I did those 5 different celluloids with him last year, where there were only 2 pens in each one, and that was cool because, I mean, hey, who doesn't want a pen when there's only 2 in the world? And so any collaboration is brilliant. And in fact, if Pilot want to make me an 823 iZods edition
with a chrome finish, that'd be amazing.
Can you imagine that? How cool would that be? There is something that is. I'm not going to tell you anything, but it's the 10th anniversary, technically, of iZods in its true self. I have done this longer than 10 years, but iZods in its true self. The anniversary is next year. And I have sounded out a couple of brands about doing a one-off in some exceptionally expensive material, not celluloid.
Did you? Sorry, I missed that because somebody.
So I've spoken to. So it's my 10th. Technically, it's the iZods.
Do you know that FPUK is 10 next year as well?
So look at that. There you go. Then you can split some of the cost with me. So I've spoken to a couple of very lovely brands about doing a 1-of-1 to celebrate the 10th, but they're one of the ones that I have conceived is produced. It's a demonstrator where all the metal is solid platinum.
Fantastic. That's out of my price range, but fantastic nonetheless.
But what I will do is, if I do it, I will sell it at cost. I'm not
amazing.
I'm not doing it to make money. I'm doing it so that I mark the 10th anniversary but whether there's anyone stupid enough to buy it, maybe if not, I could just scrub out 10 and put 20th anniversary if it's still on the website 10 years later. But yeah, look, hey, collaborations are cool. It's brilliant. There are
100%.
And I think as an industry, there probably aren't as many collaborations as other industry. Other industries, it happens all the time. I think it would be brilliant if you saw, all sorts of really brilliant stuff. Not even just, even if I got to work on it, but how brilliant would it be if you saw a mashup of all sorts of, different models produced in different finishes because 2 brands have come together. But hey, I'm probably...
No, absolutely. Yeah. So Ross has got a question that she'd like to ask.
Yeah, cool.
Do you by any chance have a way or have a Waterman catalogue which lists all the finishes on a Waterman Karen?
Oh, good question.
So I missed half of that. Sorry. The list of finishes on.
Sorry, my signal's bad. I'm in East Norfolk.
Ooh, nice. Cool.
Do you a catalogue with a list of all the Karen finishes?
Looking at the head of the Charles crew. Roz collects all of the Waterman Korans.
Yeah.
Do you have a list of all of them?
No, I don't. I'll have a chat with. I've asked
someone. I've asked Neil Waterman, can't provide it. I've compiled one as best as I can.
Right.
And I think I'm about 5 short, which is really annoying.
Okay. Can you send me the list of what you've got?
Yes, I can do that next week.
Yeah, she'll do it next week.
Yeah, cool. And I'll see what I can come up with, because there must be someone that can help you out on that.
They've got the 8 names.
Yeah.
Lucas Farmer.
We've got another question.
Yeah.
Hard question, but what robust Mont Blanc non-Skywalker would you recommend that is compatible with a piston converter?
Good question. So not a Star Walker, which that's annoying, because that's a very obvious, especially now they actually bothered to do a converter for it. For years they didn't. God, this is a tricky one, because obviously most are going to be pistons anyway. Depends what sort of finish you like. I mean, if you like, I mean, I always think that it can be boring in many ways, but in many other ways, it's the classique. I think it's, it's a pen that you can buy in black resin and gold trim, but they've made so many flaming different ones over the years. And that's obviously that's a converter pen. I think for most people, they don't realise how far back it goes in terms of how many different classes. They've done ones with carbon fibre, they've done stuff in sterling silver, they've done one, they did the hematite one with a stone cap. They've done all sorts. So, and they're robust as hell, and B, like, if they ever need servicing or whatever, they're an absolute doddle, and Mont Blanc will either do it, or you can take them to all sorts of different places.
Follow up: is there something in a classic black or blue finish?
Something in a classic black? Well, I mean, obviously the classic. Well, again, the classique is then the one. I mean, the trouble is the Star Walker takes most of these. So the Star Walker has a million and one different versions. There's that beautiful cool blue that they did years and years ago. But so yeah, the Classique, for example, they do the Blue Hour and the Glacier, and it's going to be very difficult to step away from a Classique, I'd say, and find something that would tick the bill of a cartridge converter, because once you start heading up the list, then most of them are going to be pistons anyway. Yeah, I'd just go Classique, but there's so many different options, so many.
I've got a couple more questions that got sent through earlier. Is there a pen that you actually wish that you sold, that you wish you'd kept for yourself?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and it's a very sad story. Well, it's not that sad, but it is sad. I had, God, what version was it? It was one of the classic pens once. So, if anyone's familiar with classic pens, they, for a period of time, worked with big name manufacturers and produced beautiful sterling silver versions of their flagship models. And I had in a while ago, you can tell I'm Googling at the moment. They did one with Sailor, and God, these pens were beautiful. And I got hold of, there were two versions. I got hold of the two, and it was the only two out of the whole production of about, I don't know, 1,000 pens, 500 pens that had the exceptionally rare speciality nibs on. So I think one had like a King Eagle, one had an Emperor, and they were so rare, so rare. I sold them to a customer in Hong Kong, and along the way somewhere, somebody stole the pens. They left the boxes and stole the pens. So I can't. I'm looking back. If like, why on earth I sold them? Because they were just. Oh my god, they were good. But then to know that they're somewhere out there and some bugger that stole them doesn't even.
Wow.
Like, oh god. So they were the ones. I mean, there are pens that go out that I'm like, I'd love to keep that, but
business.
There is not. Let's put it this way: there's not a single pen that comes in this office that doesn't leave this office at some point. Like, I can appreciate it, and I might look at it, and I might, I'll try it out, whatever. But everything leaves the office because otherwise, it's.
Sorry to interrupt. I think Tom is trying to show you some classic pens.
I don't know if you could.
Well, I've just found one. So there was CP. I think there was CP7.
Yeah, he hasn't got us on, Tom, so you can't see us.
Okay, so
oh, didn't you buy those the other day?
Yeah, I bought the Pacific from Sarge the other day.
Oh, nice.
And then I bought the Atlantic from.
That's it. Yeah, CP7. Yeah.
From Sarge at the Dutch pen show, not the one just gone, but just over a year ago.
No, they're so good. And to say the ones that I had were, I think they were unused, and they see, you're just showing off now. Look, I saw all these beauties in there. But yeah, the ones I had then had obviously the nibs as well. And so I don't know. It's annoying to think they're somewhere out there. I don't know where they are. Maybe
as long as they didn't get melted down.
No, and they probably did, didn't they? Someone probably looked at that and just thought it was a fancy bic. God. But yeah, I mean, look, there's lots of beautiful stuff. There's lots of shiny, delightful things. But yeah, skeletons are the other ones. Any Montblanc skeletons that come in, but I definitely can't keep those.
We got another cheeky one, which is which you sort of answered. So it's a two-part question. Are limited edition pens always a good investment? And if so, how much do you think that the FPUK pen will be worth in 10 years?
God, it'll be worth a fortune. What you don't know is I'm buying up everyone's selling them to me at a profit. If I saw Ed's comment saying about the Bic Sterling Silver. I know, I've got one. They're very cool.
No, that is quite cool, actually.
Yeah, hey, wouldn't it be lovely? Hey, wouldn't it be nice if that one went up in value? Why not? Sod it. So clearly, some. I'm not. I felt bad earlier because I'm not saying that limited edition pens don't go up in value, but what I'm saying is the proportion of them that go up in value over a period of time that is acceptable for most people is minute. Especially these days, I think where the entry point is much higher, and clearly we might be sat here in 20 years' time, and I'll say that the equivalent writer's edition is £7,000 to buy, but if you look back at the price points of earlier, they are proportionately lower. So your starting point is so much lower. Whereas if for a writer's edition, if you're in a Montblanc writer's edition, if you're in at £1,000, 1,100 retail, it's got to go some to make that a decent return for you. Because not only have you got to be lucky enough to pick the one that goes up in value, you've then got to find an avenue to sell it where you're going to make that premium. It's a tricky beast to pick. But yeah, the FPUK one will be a stone cold winner.
And are there any pens that you would steer clear of, and why?
I don't think there's any particular pens that I don't buy. I think there are pens that I might check certain things on before committing to them, either because the repair is particularly expensive, or they're notorious for writing issues straight out of the box or whatever. But I don't think there's anything. I'm one of these people where I genuinely try and buy completely across the spectrum of pens. So, you know, if I got an inquiry now with, you know, 20 pens and they were all completely off-piste, then yeah, why not? So there's nothing that, no, I don't think it would be fair to say that there's stuff that I don't buy in terms of brands. You know, clearly there are models that just don't fit the bill for what we do. That's not to say they're not good pens, but they just don't, you know, it's difficult because we get a lot of people that get in touch with inquiries on selling Parker, and clearly there are lots of Parker pens that we buy, but there are lots that we don't, not because they're not brilliant, but just because of what we do and the time involved and everything. It's not worth buying, because if, you know, if we're buying it at 25 and we're selling it at 45 or 50, by the time we factored in the cost of time to write the listing, to clean it, to take the photos, it's not what we, but that's, you know, so no, there's no brands we don't buy. Yeah, in fact, yeah, I love to go off piste. Give me something unusual and I'll hoover it up. Any more? God, people are still here.
I think that's it. I think that's. And does anybody else have any more questions?
I had actually one on the back of my mind, but it's eluded me.
It must have been a very, you know, you can message me later with it. It's
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You know, it wasn't one about, you know, something embarrassing about, God, Roy, I bought this pen off you and it was an absolute disaster.
I'll
Oh, no, it has come back to me. Sorry. How did your relationship with Nino come about?
In all honesty, I genuinely can't remember the exact first point. I think it was a case of I was kind of just looking about at bits and brands and new stuff, and I saw that Nino was relaunching the Tuno at that time, and I think I just dropped him an email and said, no one's stocking them in the UK. You know, is there a reason for that? Do you fancy a chat? And it kind of just went from there. And, you know, Nino's a brilliant guy to work with. He's incredibly generous with the time that he gives you, and, you know, he's always open to my crazy suggestions. And that there's a whole talk that I did before on making the paradigm, and I think one of the points I stressed on that was, it was nice and easy for me because I just came up with all these weird and wonderful things, and can I do this and can I do that? And then he very gracefully had to transform that into something that actually resembled a pen. So, you know, I like working with people that I get on with, and he's got a huge history in the world of pens. But even to this day, after 40 odd years or whatever of working in the pen industry, he's still as passionate as ever, and yeah, a very warm person, really. But yeah, I can't remember the exact moment, but I think it was probably an email from me, to be fair.
Thank you very much.
Ros has another question.
Yep.
Have you ever been offered a Monte Grappa monstrosity?
Yes is the answer.
I think you know the ones I'm referring to. The gladiators and
the ones that come with their own background.
Yes.
I love the chat about Monte Grappa because, I mean, they make some very beautiful classic stuff, and God, they go like, wow, like some of the stuff is just insane, like the retail price. But I had someone get in touch recently who'd consistently bought these pens across several years and wanted to sell them, and it's very difficult because on one level you appreciate the craftsmanship, but they're just.
Sorry.
I'm being. No, I don't know who's listening, do I? I don't know. Look, each to their own. Hey, if that floats your boat and you've got the money to do it, who gives a damn? Like, you know what I mean? It's each pen has a reason, and if you're thrilled with it, then I don't care. because that's wonderful. And if you like it, fantastic. But some of their stuff is insane. Like it is absolutely insane. But they must be going somewhere,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they do produce some pens that are an acquired taste. Maybe is the kind of
polite way.
Yeah.
Tom's got a question for us.
Hey, Roy. Just a quick question about when you're pricing pens for sale, particularly numbered limited editions.
Yeah.
How much difference does the number that the pen has make to what you asked for price-wise? Are there specific numbers that are worth more than others, for example?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. I think the lower, often the lower the better, obviously, but it depends on what the pen is, and those that are looking for lower numbers, it's a much smaller part of the market. Yes, it will. There is a certain point where there will be a premium. What that point is will depend on how many. So it's a really, like some of the writers' editions. Use 10,000, 12,000, 7,000, whatever. If you're down in sub 100, then that's really good. If you're down in 10 or less, that's mega. If it's 1,000 or less, there's probably not a lot of difference. The one that I had I had one not that long ago that made a big difference. It never reached the website. Was the Mont Blanc JFK limited edition, and it was the ballpoint, and they made 1,917 of them, and I had number 1. And yeah, there was a chunky premium, but that was because how often do you see number 1 of anything like that appear? I try not to get. I think it's easy to get greedy when it comes to stuff like that, and you think, oh, it's a low number, so I'm going to add 20% on, 30% on. If it's an incredibly low number, then I'll probably know who it'll go to anyway. But yeah, it does make a difference. And also, you said about specific numbers. Yeah, that makes a difference. If you get a patron of arts and it's at 888, and you've got number 088, or you've got 188 or 288 or 388, or the more similar the number to the overall number, the more interesting it is. So a lot depends on the pen, but yeah, there will be a premium for stuff that represents a very low number or a very specific number within that range.
Thank you.
Are there any pens that are very difficult to acquire?
The pen that's difficult to acquire is when somebody specifically asks me for one and then it doesn't flaming appear. That's the pen that's difficult. Yeah, look, there are. I could find, if somebody came to me and needed something and wasn't massively price sensitive, I could find you pretty much anything Mont Blanc, and I could have a flaming good go at finding most other stuff. The difficulty comes if the budget for finding that pen is below what most people at that level are going to be parting with. But yeah, look, sometimes it marries up absolutely perfectly, and you'll get a pen in, I'll get an inquiry, and then one day later I'll get that exact pen in. But yeah, I like a challenge. So yeah, clearly there are, the more limited it is, the more difficult it is. But I probably know where most stuff is if it was needed. It's just, yeah, and that's a big part of, there's a big part of the business which is never seen, where it's kind of the super high level of bringing people together and matching up stuff that people want. And I never showcase that, and I never put photos of that on Instagram, because it just won't happen. I'm not going to showcase something where it's super rare and the people involved don't either want someone to know they're selling it, or that they're quite, you know, they don't want to know it's part of their collection. So yeah, I can find most stuff, but there is always that pen that isn't that difficult to find, and then suddenly someone wants one. You go, yeah, I can get that, and then you sit there and you're like, oh my god, you know, how difficult can it be? I had 5 of them in the last 2 months, and now I can't find one of them. Yeah.
And another question: are there any brands that you don't like to use? I'm not even just genuinely sitting on the fence here. I don't think there's any brands that I'm like, I won't use that. There are brands that I prefer using or whatever, but I think I can find enjoyment in most pens. If it writes well, I can find enjoyment in most pens. You know, I'm not saying that everyone appeals in the same way or to the same level, or, you know, or it's a pen that I'd use for months on end. But I can, if it's a good writer, then there tends to be some level of enjoyment there anyway. So yeah, there's no brand where I'm like, God, I wouldn't touch that, or, you know, I'd never write with that. I think I try and remain pretty open to all that stuff, because otherwise sometimes you miss out on some really interesting pens just because it's a particular brand. We've got a question from Chris.
Yep.
There we go. I'll take myself off mute. Would you consider doing another ink? I mean, you don't have to go for a run as well, but
I am doing the marathon next year again. So yeah, what people haven't realised is I will be tapping them up again for. But hey, look, I mean, yeah, inks are much easier to do. So we have an ink called Beat House Blue, which is made by Robert Oster, and because the building where we are is the Sugar Beet House, so it's called Beet House Blue because of that. That's an ink where if people come to visit, they get a bottle, and I occasionally bring it to shows and you know, give out a few bottles. But yeah, that's an ink specifically as a thank you, really, for coming to see us. Yeah, I love doing inks. I'm very close to doing cartridges for next year. But yeah, I don't know. Hey, look, I think the difficulty is it's on my list, but it's on a, yeah, I like to try and find a reason to do it rather than just peddling out. So I don't retail inks because there's lots of brilliant retailers that do that, and so if I'm doing it, it's tied in to something. Like we did the Champions and Heroes one during COVID as a fundraiser. I've done, and I like doing stuff for I did Sheltered from the Storm because I was running for Shelter, and so I like there to be a reason, and I'll never just do inks because you can do it. I like it to have a story behind it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I can imagine that. I mean, Sheltered from the Storm was such a lovely ink. So
I just redo that because I am running for Shelter again. Maybe I'll just slightly change the name.
It's a really nice colour. It's a lovely ink to use.
And the lovely thing again, you know, working with Rob on that, is I went to him and said, this is what I want. I want it to have red, but I want it to have the black tones to show the storm effect. And he's just then like goes away, does his Harry Potter cauldron thing, and then sends you a swatch and goes, what do you think of that, mate? And you're like, you know what?
Can you tell what it is yet?
Can you tell what it is? Right, I flaming can tell what it is. Bottle it up.
Yeah, he's genius.
He is, and he's such a nice guy. And so yeah, there will be more inks, but yeah, there has to be a kind of reason behind why. Why it's done.
You put me down for one already, so there you go.
You're a star. Thank you. Consider it done.
I've got a question. It's more a curiosity question. You know, when you got limited editions and they run in large numbers, like 8,000 or whatever, do they actually produce that many, or do they build up as many as they sell and stop?
Look, the regular part of me says no, they make all of them and they're sat somewhere. The cynical part of me says there is no way they make all of those, and because why would they? Why would you sit on inventory if it's not moving and you can quickly you can quickly produce the rest? So I'm sure there are examples where they have made all of them, and this, I'm not just saying one brand, I'm saying, but I should imagine there's a hell of a lot of examples where they have said it's a limited edition of 500, 1,000, 10,000, whatever it is, and they will only make the number that is required in the market, and if more is then required, they will make them. Because why would you build that inventory if it wasn't needed? So I'm pretty certain they don't.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all right.
Any more for any more? Okay, I will cease the recording.
Perfect.